One of the most important things to know how to do is change your boat oil. So the head technician from Marine Parts Plus, Troy, is going to show us how to do it.
We're going to go over real quick changing your engine oil. We're going to use a vacuum operated pump here. On this engine, all it has a dipstick, which we have pulled out down there, that goes right directly to the bottom of the oil pan. We're going to run the engine to get it hot. That way the oil is going to suspend any particles in it. After we've run the engine and got it up to temperature, the first thing before we pull the oil out of the engine is we're going to want to loosen the oil filter. That way it's going to start to get it to drain. The lower you can grab it to the base of the oil filter, the better it's going to be. You can either poke a hole in the top of it or take the dipstick out. It'll vent the oil filter. It'll let it start to run down. We're going to take our vacuum pump here. This dipstick, where I pulled it out, the tube goes right to the bottom. Or this particular apparatus just has a hose on it. Onto the filler neck. As I pump it up, it's going to put a vacuum into the can and it starts extracting the oil. This engine probably contains 5 quarts, maybe 5.5. As soon as we pulled all the oil out, we're going to start to pull air out of the hose. You'll know when it's empty. It may start gurgling for a while. This engine has an upside down oil filter which will drain itself. Just going to want to lube the gasket. Want to set it right down on there. And we're just going to hand tighten it. We never put a wrench on it. They give you a color code on it. They tell you what all the colors mean. Yellow is engine oil. If it had blue, it would be antifreeze seawater. Brown is power steering, which is power steering down there. And black would be, if it had a black tab on it, it would be the freshwater cooling. Right here we see the engine oil. That's where we're going to fill it. This engine should take about 5.5 quarts. We'll put about 4.5 quarts into this engine first. And we're going to let it run on 4.5 quarts, let it fill everything up, fill the oil filter up. I'm going to shut the engine off. If you've drained the engine oil and it's only been about 2 minutes and you're throwing it back in, you're trying to do it fast, you're always going to find false readings on the stick because there still will be residual oil in the tube that you just pumped it out of. On a hose that goes to the bottom of the oil pan, you'll never have that problem. You'll always get a correct reading on it. When you're changing it, leave the dipstick out of it. Once you run it, let it sit for about a minute. Put the dipstick back into the hole. And then we're going to pull it out and we're going to look for the marks on the stick. See oil up one side of the stick and it's right where it should be, you're going to know, okay, that's what I'm going to look at. If you want to get an exact reading, run this engine for about 10 minutes. It'll heat everything up. Then you can check it. It'll let the oil run back down the tube and you'll be able to get an exact reading. And on your dipstick, it's going to give you a full and an add mark. As long as anywhere in between those graduated lines, it's fine. When it gets down to add, it may need a 1/2 quart. And like I say, generally an engine of this size will run about 5.5 quarts and it'll be full. But you start with 4.5 so you don't overfill it. You never want to overfill your oil as well as you don't want to leave it underfull. And put the cap back on when we know we're full and put the dipstick back in. Once it's running, you can check your oil filter, make sure you have no leaks around that area. Some motors, it's harder to find the oil fill in the dipstick because of all the stuff, whether it has freshwater cooling on it or it's a different manufacturer. It may be towards the back of the engine. But they're generally the newer motors are up by the front or off to one of the sides in a point that's easy to get to.
So that's how you change your boat's engine oil. To buy these parts, please visit marinepartsplus.com. The right parts, fast.